My wife secretly sold our family home for $750, $0 without telling me, then started a side business with my inheritance of $200, $0. Now she's claiming I have no legal right to the house or the money, and we're headed for a brutal court battle over everything. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, if someone told me a year ago I'd be sitting here betrayed and furious over a woman I loved and trusted, I'd have laughed in their face. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, especially when you least expect it. The most shocking part. It all started with a gut feeling that something was off, and that gut feeling turned into a full-blown nightmare faster than I could blink. My name's Mike. I'm 42, married to Lisa for about 10 years now. We had a pretty normal life, decent jobs, a nice house we bought a few years back. 2 kids I adore, and a quiet routine that I thought was unbreakable. Lisa was always a little bitchy, a little manipulative, but I figured that was just her personality. She's always been good at hiding her true colors when it suited her. I'd noticed some small things over the past few months. She was more secretive with her phone, always locking it when she went to the bathroom or when I was around. She'd get defensive if I asked about her day, and there were times she'd be strangely flush or nervous when I'd bring up money or the future. Looking back now, I realized those were signs. But I ignored them, convinced I was overthinking or being paranoid. She'd brush me off, call me insecure, say I was imagining things. She's good at lying, that one. The real trouble started when I noticed the oddest thing. Her phone kept ringing late at night, and I'd catch her sneaking out of the bedroom to answer it. She'd go into the bathroom or the laundry room, whispering and giggling like a teenager hiding a secret. I didn't want to confront her directly at first, thinking maybe it was just a friend or some work thing, but deep down I knew this was more. Then came the day I found out about the house. I was doing some work on the garage, fixing a shelf, and I decided to look through some papers in her purse, something I never normally did, but I had a weird instinct. I found a set of documents, something about a property sale. Turns out, Lisa had sold our family home without telling me. Not just that, she'd pocketed $750, $0 from it. I stared at the papers, my stomach twisting. How could she do this behind my back? I'd always thought the house was our shared asset, our home, and now she sold it like it was nothing. That wasn't all. As I dug deeper, I discovered she'd used part of my inheritance, $200, I'd gotten from my dad's estate, to start a side business. She claimed I had no right to the house or the money because I was controlling and needy, and I'd never see any of it. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How long has she been lying? Who was she really? I was furious, but part of me was also crushed. How could I have missed all this? How could she betray me like that, sell everything we built, and then lie to my face about it? That night I stayed up staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. My mind was racing. What was her game? Was she cheating? Was she planning to leave with the money, or was this just about greed? I couldn't tell anymore. All I knew was that my wife, the woman I loved and trusted, had turned into a stranger. I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless. I kept thinking about all those little moments when she'd dismiss me, lie about her whereabouts, act secretive. It all made sense now. She'd been sneaking around, hiding her real plans. The worst part, I didn't even have a clue about her affairs, if she was cheating or if she had someone else on the side. But I had a feeling. Call it intuition, call it a father's instinct, but I knew something was very wrong. And that's when I decided I had to find out the truth, no matter what it took. Because once I knew the full story, I'd know how to fight back. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not without a fight. That's when I started to plan my next move, and honestly, I didn't know what was worse, the betrayal or the fact that I was about to become part of a war I never signed up for. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed answers. I couldn't just sit there and let her keep lying to my face, especially not after discovering she'd sold our house and started her own side business with my inheritance. I had to confront her, but I knew better than to do it blindly. Lisa was manipulative and she'd done a good job hiding her tracks so far. I had to be smart about this. The first thing I did was dig into the paperwork more. I wanted every detail: when she sold the house, who she dealt with, where the money went, and how she managed to start a side business with my inheritance without me knowing. I spent hours online, going through public records, bank statements, and emails. It took some effort, but I found the transaction records for the house sale. She sold it to a shady real estate agent named Carl, who had a reputation for handling quick, discreet deals. The sale had gone through exactly a month ago for $750, $0. The money had been deposited into her account, and I could see her withdrawing large sums in cash shortly after. I was furious. How could she do this? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach all over again. And what really set me off was the fact that she'd hidden this from me. My wife, my partner of 10 years, was capable of this level of deception. I kept asking myself, what was her game? Was she planning to leave? Was she cheating on me? Or was she just after the money? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to find out if she was cheating on me too, because all these lies pointed to a bigger picture. One night, I decided to follow her. She'd been acting weird lately, coming home late, taking calls in the bathroom, avoiding my questions. I waited for her to leave the house, then I followed her to a small downtown hotel. I watched her sneak inside, and my stomach twisted again. I couldn't believe it. She was meeting someone. I didn't see who, but the way she was acting, the quick kisses she gave him, the way she hid behind her phone, it was obvious she was hiding something. That was the confirmation I needed. Lisa was cheating. She was having an affair on top of everything else. When I got back home, I felt numb. I didn't know whether to be more angry or heartbroken. I'd always suspected she might be cheating, but seeing her in the act made it real. I felt betrayed in ways I couldn't even put into words. I couldn't sleep that night, replaying every moment, every sign I missed, every lie she told. The next morning, I decided I had to confront her. No more hiding, no more pretending I didn't know. I needed the truth straight from her mouth. That afternoon, I called her at work, told her I knew everything about the house, the inheritance, her side business, and the affair. Her reaction was priceless. She got defensive, started lying again, claiming I was paranoid, that she was just working late, that I was imagining things. She called me insecure, accused me of spying and overreacting. But I didn't buy it. I told her I had proof, and I demanded she tell me the truth. That's when she snapped, her bitchy side coming out full force. She yelled at me, said I was a controlling husband, that I had no right to question her, and that I was just jealous because I was too busy working and never paid attention to her. That moment hit me hard. I realized how much she hated being caught, how she thrived on deception and control. I felt a mixture of rage and sadness. How did it come to this? 10 years of marriage, and now I was sitting here feeling like I'd been played for a fool. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I held it in. Instead, I told her I needed some time to think, that I'd be staying elsewhere for a while. I told her I was done with her lies and I wanted her to leave me alone until I figured out what to do next. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything: the house sale, the side business, her affair, all of it. I was devastated, but I also felt a flicker of resolve. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. I had to decide what my next move was: divorce, court, or maybe something more calculated. Whatever it was, I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. She'd proven she was capable of lying, cheating, and stealing from me. And I was starting to realize that maybe I'd been blind for too long. I sat there, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. I'd trusted her with my life, my money, my future, and she'd thrown it all away for some affair and a quick cash grab. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced, but I also knew I'd have to be smart. I wasn't just angry, I was determined. Whatever she had planned next, I'd be ready. After that confrontation, everything changed. I knew I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had to act, and fast. The first thing I did was get a lawyer, someone who specializes in property and inheritance disputes. I needed to understand my legal rights because I was pretty sure she was trying to jerk me out of what was rightfully mine. The lawyer confirmed what I suspected. She had no legal claim to the house anymore since she sold it without my consent. The sale was shady and I had proof. The money from the house sale was in her account and I had access to those bank statements. I also discovered she transferred some of the inheritance to a separate account, claiming it was for her business ventures. That made me even angrier, but the lawyer warned me. She'd already made moves to hide her assets. She's smart, manipulative, and she's played the long game. I needed to act quickly. I decided I'd file for an emergency court order to freeze her assets and prevent her from draining everything before we even went to court. That was the first step, because if she was planning to run with the money or hide it, I had to stop her. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her side business. I found out she registered an LLC under a fake name, and she'd been funneling money into it from the inheritance and the house sale. I also discovered she'd been secretly meeting with investors and clients, none of which I had any idea about until I looked through her emails. It was clear she was planning to make this business her new empire, all on my dime. I went through her emails and texts and I found messages from the guy she was cheating with. His name was Jake, a guy she'd met at a bar a few months back. They'd been sneaking around and she'd told him she was married but not happy. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money, it was about betrayal on every level. I was furious. But I also knew I had to keep my head. I started collecting all the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, emails, everything. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case. I also hired a private investigator to confirm what I suspected. Lisa was not only cheating but also planning to leave, possibly with the money. The pie confirmed she'd been staying out late, meeting Jake, and even talking about starting over somewhere new. It was a punch to the gut. I felt like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One night, I decided to confront her again, but this time with proof. I told her I knew about her affair, her side business, and the house sale. I laid everything out on the table, screenshots, emails, bank records. Her face turned beet red, and she started to panic. Her usual bitchy attitude turned into outright anger. She yelled at me, called me paranoid, accused me of invading her privacy, and said I was just jealous because she was more successful than I'd ever be. She told me I had no right to control her or her money, that I was just insecure and threatened by her independence. That's when I snapped. I told her I was done being her pawn, her fool, her victim. I told her she wasn't going to walk away with everything, her side business, the house, the inheritance, while I was left with nothing. I told her I was going to fight for my rights, and if she tried to run, I'd make sure she paid for it. That was the last straw. I told her to pack her things and leave. She yelled and cursed, but I didn't care. I was done with her lies. I called the lawyer again, filed the necessary paperwork for the court order, and prepared myself for what was coming next. That night I sat alone in the house she once called ours, feeling emptier than I ever had. The betrayal was like a knife in my chest. For years I believed we had a future, built a life together. But her greed, her lies, her cheating, she destroyed everything. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind. The worst part, knowing that she thought she could just lie, cheat, and steal her way out of this. That she'd get away with it. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I had the evidence, I had the law, and I had the resolve to take her down if I had to. I kept thinking about what this all meant. My trust was shattered, my marriage broken beyond repair. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been holding on to a fantasy, that Lisa was the woman I married, while she was busy building her own empire on my dime and sneaking around behind my back. It was a hard lesson, but one I needed to learn. I couldn't let her get away with it. Not this time. Not after everything I'd sacrificed for that marriage. I knew I had to prepare for the fight of my life, and I was ready. The court hearing was set for 2 weeks later. I spent every waking hour preparing my case, gathering every piece of evidence I had, and lining up witnesses who could testify about her secretive behavior, her financial manipulations, and her affair with Jake. I knew she'd try to spin it, make herself look innocent, but I had enough to blow her story wide open. The lawyer warned me she'd probably try to claim I was abusive or controlling, but I had nothing to hide. just a marriage betrayed by greed and deception. In the meantime, Lisa was relentless in her attempts to gaslight me. She kept calling, crying, begging me to drop the case, insisting she did everything out of love and that I was overreacting. She spun stories about how she needed to start fresh, how I was jealous of her success, and how I was just insecure because I didn't want her to be happy. It was classic Lisa: blame everyone else, deny everything, and act like the victim. But I knew better. I had proof. I'd seen her with Jake, I'd seen the bank statements, and I knew she'd lied about the house sale. The day of the hearing finally arrived. I was nervous but determined. I walked into the courtroom with all my evidence neatly organized: printouts, affidavits, bank records, everything. Lisa showed up looking angry and defiant, her bitchy attitude on full display. She tried to act innocent, claiming she was just trying to do what was best for the family, but her voice trembled when she was questioned under oath. The judge asked her about the sale of the house, and she tried to deny everything, claiming she'd been misled by the real estate agent. But I had the official documents proving she signed and sold it herself, and I presented them confidently. When I took the stand, I told the court about how I discovered the sale, her secret side business, her affair, and how she'd been manipulating both the money and me. I explained how she'd lied to my face for months, how she'd been sneaking around with Jake, and how she'd been funneling money into her new business. I could see her trying to interrupt to talk over me, but the judge kept her in line. I was honest, direct, and factual. No emotional outbursts, just the facts. I laid out everything, showing her emails, bank transfers, and even a recorded conversation I had with the pie confirming her meetings with Jake. The courtroom was silent as I finished. Lisa's face was pale, her usual bitchy smirk replaced by a look of desperation. When the judge finally spoke, he ordered an immediate freeze on her assets, including her bank accounts and her business accounts. He also granted me temporary custody of the kids, citing her financial misconduct and the suspicion of her affair. It was a huge win, proof that I was fighting for what was right, but I knew this was just the beginning. The real battle was ahead. As I left the courtroom, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. I had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Lisa was furious. She called me that night, screaming threats, accusing me of ruining her life and crying crocodile tears about how she'd do anything to keep her family. I listened quietly, knowing that her words were just another lie. I'd seen her true face now, and I wasn't going to be fooled again. I told her she needed to leave the house and that I was filing for divorce. She responded with more curses and accusations, but I didn't care anymore. I was done being her victim. In the days that followed, I moved into a small apartment nearby, just close enough to keep an eye on things. I kept the evidence close, ready to use it if she tried to fight me for custody or the assets. I also started making plans for how to rebuild my life. The betrayal had shaken me to my core, but I was determined not to let her win. I'd lost the house, the marriage, and probably the trust I once had in her, but I still had my dignity, and I refused to let her take that from me. Looking back now, I realize how much I underestimated her, how clever, manipulative, and ruthless she really was. But I also learned what I'm truly capable of: standing up for myself, fighting for what's mine, and not letting someone else's greed and lies destroy me. I didn't want revenge just for the sake of it. I wanted justice. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be a pushover, that I'd fight for everything I deserved. It's a bitter lesson, but one I needed to learn. And honestly, I'm just glad I finally saw her for who she really was. The aftermath of the court victory was nothing short of chaos. Lisa didn't take it lying down. She escalated her threats, trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. She hired her own lawyer and started a counterattack, claiming I was abusive and that I had no right to the assets because I was controlling and mentally unstable. She spun stories about how I was trying to ruin her life, how I was jealous of her success, and how I was just trying to punish her for having an affair. It was classic Lisa: blame shifting and playing the victim. Meanwhile, I had to stay focused. I knew her game. She was trying to wear me down, hoping I'd give up or settle for less. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate her way out of this. I had the evidence, the court's support, and a clear understanding of what she was capable of. I also knew I needed to protect myself emotionally because her words, her threats, they cut deep. She'd always been good at twisting things to make herself look innocent, but I refused to let her control the narrative anymore. I started seeing a therapist to deal with the emotional toll. The betrayal, the lies, the loss of my home, all of it hit hard. I felt angry, betrayed, and exhausted, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized that I'd been holding on to a fantasy, one where Lisa was the woman I married, the woman I loved. But she'd been hiding her true self all along, building her own empire on my inheritance, cheating on me, and lying about everything. It hurt to admit, but I knew I had to accept the truth if I ever wanted to move forward. During this time, I also started rebuilding my relationship with my kids. They were too young to understand everything, but I made sure they knew they were loved and protected. I didn't want them to grow up thinking their father was a fool or that betrayal was normal. I wanted to show them that even in the darkest moments, you can stand tall and do what's right. The legal battle dragged on for months. Lisa kept trying to drag things out, filing motions, trying to get the court to reconsider the asset freeze. She even accused me of harassment, trying to paint herself as the victim. But I had everything documented: her lies, her manipulations, her affair evidence. The court saw through her bullshit. Eventually, the judge ruled in my favor again, reaffirming the asset freeze and confirming that I had the right to the house and the inheritance. It was a relief, but I knew she wouldn't go quietly. In the quiet moments, I reflected on everything I'd been through. I'd lost the house, my marriage, and my sense of security. But I gained clarity about who Lisa really was: selfish, manipulative, and driven by greed. I also learned that I was stronger than I thought. I'd faced betrayal on every level and come out the other side still standing. I knew the road to healing wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to rebuild my life, better and wiser. One thing I realized is that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair, and I refuse to be a fool again. I'm not saying I'll never love again, but I will be cautious. I've learned that some people wear masks, and their true selves only show when it's too late. So now I focus on my kids, my future, and making sure I never let anyone manipulate or betray me like this again. I've been burned badly, but I'm still here. And honestly, that's the biggest victory of all. Looking back, I realize how much my life has changed in just a few short months. The house is gone, the marriage is over, and I've lost the woman I thought I knew. But amidst all the chaos and heartbreak, I've found something I didn't expect: a new sense of strength. The betrayal cut deep, but it also forced me to confront truths I'd been blind to for years. I see now that trust is fragile and people can surprise you in the worst ways. The lesson I take from all this is simple: never ignore the signs, and never let anyone manipulate your life without consequences. I've come to understand that revenge isn't about hurting someone just because they hurt you. It's about standing up for yourself, making things right, and reclaiming your dignity. That's what I did. I gathered evidence, fought in court, and refused to be a victim. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity and a new outlook on life. I've learned that sometimes you have to burn everything down to rebuild something better, and I'm doing just that. As I sit here, reflecting on everything I've been through, I feel a strange peace. I've closed a chapter that nearly destroyed me, and I'm ready to move forward. My focus now is on my kids, my career, and rebuilding my confidence. The pain will always be there, but it no longer defines me. I know I'm capable of more than I ever thought, more than just being a betrayed husband. I'm stronger, wiser, and more aware of what truly matters. To anyone out there who's going through something similar, trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. People will lie, cheat, and manipulate, but the truth always comes out in the end. And when it does, you'll realize that standing tall, even after being broken, is the most powerful thing you can do. Life may throw you into the fire, but if you keep your head up, you'll come out stronger on the other side. That's what I've learned, and I hope it helps someone else to see that even in the darkest moments, there's a way forward.